Now, fanboys being defensive is understandable because I mean the history of nerds is like they would like things that would be considered weird or not normal, like comics or video games or Star Wars or something. And back then it was normal to just grab a nerdy person or a fanboy and just shove them in the locker or in the toilet. Although, I mean, at my high school, the lockers weren't really that big enough to fit a person, so I never really got that. But yeah, nerd culture is becoming more and more normal nowadays because more people are like, hey, this stuff that the nerds like, it's actually pretty cool and fun. Like The Boys, a lot of people like The Boys because Homelander has a has a fantastic actor and is such an interesting character. Are a lot of people are gravitating towards anime because let's face it, there's not really a lot of live action shows that are good. A lot of live action series have a huge habit of going downhill. Like they start off great and then they just hit downhill. And a lot of stuff like BET and MTV, any of those live action slice of life shows, those are also awful. A lot of live action movies themselves are usually not that good. So yeah, that's why a lot of people have started gravitating more towards anime and manga. You know, like call it normie or whatever. Like complain about Jujutsu Kaisen or whatever popular new show is out. I haven't really watched any 2020s anime, but I think it's really cool that a lot of stuff has gotten more popular and more normalized. Like now we're pretty much living in a period of time where parents are introducing their kids into anime. Back then it was the other way around, you know? And you can't really fault anyone for being into anime or anime becoming more normalized because again, that's human choice. People have a right to get into something and make it popular, whether or not you want to gatekeep it or not. And like I said, there's not really a lot of live action shows that are interesting. Like, I think the last good live action show that I saw that was consistently good and great was Better Call Saul, and that show ended like a few years ago. You know. But anyway, the reason why fanboys are so defensive about their media is due to a mixture of bullying and feeling entitled. Like they got to defend their product. Like they can't just acknowledge that, hey, I like this bad thing. They got to be like, no, no, this thing is actually good, and you just didn't. You just missed the point if you missed it, if you don't like it. Media literacy. So here are some really defensive fandoms that I consider to be the most defensive and easy to piss off. Like for starters, Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2, this was a game that got a lot of hate on release, and nowadays people are like, oh, actually, the game was actually good. And a lot of problems with these Dark Souls defense videos is that instead of just...
This video is an offshoot from the video.
Sorry about that. Instead of just defending Dark Souls 2, what they have to do is that they gotta say, well, actually, it's not as bad as you think, or they'll have to say something along the lines of, well, I'm gonna just try to make Dark Souls 1 and 3 and other FromSoft games look bad in order to make Dark Souls 2 look good. That's why a lot of these Dark Souls 2 videos come down to like a bunch of copium. I even see this online as well in like Facebook groups where someone will be like, "Oh, if you didn't like Dark Souls 2, you completely missed the point." Like it's so hard for these people to just grasp an ideal that maybe people don't like Dark Souls 2 or that Dark Souls 2 has some serious flaws, like the boss fights not being that great. And what's even more funnier about Dark Souls fans is that now they're always fighting within themselves. There's a lot of infighting in the Dark Souls 2 community. I mean, Dark Souls 2 is a good game, and Scholar ruined it. Well, this is weird. I thought Scholar was basically Dark Souls 2, but, it fixed the shit that people complain about with the original Dark Souls 2. Now, according to this guy, Scholar ruined it. But then there are also people who are like, actually, Scholar is a better version. Like, it's just incredible. The infighting with Dark Souls 2 fans is hilarious to me because they're not only fighting each other, but they also got to deal with other, FromSoft fans shitting on Dark Souls 2. Like, nobody really wants to shit on Bloodborne. And people try to make Dark Souls 3 look bad, but at the end of the day, a lot of people, have the same conclusion that Dark Souls 3 is way better than 2, regardless of how many overly long critique videos you want to make of it, trying to make Dark Souls 3 look bad. But what's this one right here? Dark Souls, I already joked about this video. It's like, but still, connecting Marxism to Dark Souls is stupid. Anyway, oh wait, look at this one. Dark Souls was always good. Cowards? Are you really? You're calling people cowards for not liking a video game? Like, my goodness, man, someone's desperate for validation here, and yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, Dark Souls 2, like, didn't it sell millions anyway? Like, if you like Dark Souls 2, you've already won. The game was a success. It was so successful that they made a third game after all. Now look at this. Dark Souls 2 critiques are slop. And it's basically just 2 hours of, I don't like this person who said a bad thing about Dark Souls 2. And I like how the thumbnail throws in Mahler and, what's his name? Matthew Matosis. And yeah, that's a bold move, I mean, I don't like Matthew Matosis either. But, I don't know. His Dark Souls 2 critique was pretty reasonable. And I'm sorry that you can't cope with the idea that a lot of people, agree with their viewpoints. Uh, anyway, let's talk about some other defensive fandoms. I just gotta say, man, Dark Souls 2 fans, you guys are like the king of cope. Now, believe it or not, The Last of Us 2 is a successful game and has a lot of fans. The game sold 10 million copies after all and has some of the highest rated reviews ever. How I see The Last of Us 2 is that it dumbed down the characters and has more millennial-esque writing and some other terrible dialogue moments. There's even a really cringy scene where the characters go through a synagogue and, it just so happens that Ellie's gay girlfriend is Jewish, so then we get a lecture about Jewish hardship. That's a real moment in the game. And there's some other really stupid character moments too, like one woman who's like pregnant decides to go out into a war zone and she didn't even really need to do it in the first place. But yeah, Dark Souls 2 has one of the most defensive fandoms ever, because the thing about Dark Souls 2, I'm sorry, Last of Us 2, fuck. The thing about Last of Us 2 fanboys is that if you don't like the game, they're going to say something along the lines of, well, you missed the point, or you just don't get the story. It's too complicated for you. What's complicated about the Last of Us 2 story? It's a revenge story. Literally, everything that happened in The Last of Us 2 was because of revenge. I don't care how many times these, essayists or analysis people try to subvert that. No, literally, everything that happened in The Last of Us 2 was due to vengeance, and it's a shitty vengeance story. It's a shitty anti-revenge story. Like, when I think of a good revenge story, what immediately comes to my mind, or a good anti-revenge story anyway, would be something like, Red Dead Redemption 2. And that's the thing about The Last of Us 2 fanboys. They try to make Last of Us 2 seem like something original. Like, oh, this is the first game where you get to play as the villain's point of view. Wrong. There are other video games where you got to play from the antagonist's point of view. Nier Automata. What else? Yakuza 0, where you play as Majima, because from Kiryu's point of view, Majima is the bad guy, and vice versa. There are other games where you play as the quote-unquote villain, and The Last of Us 2 just did a shit job at it. I mean, Abby is one of the most boring characters I've ever played as in a video game. She says nothing interesting or funny, and her arc is completely unoriginal, and I don't feel bad for her. But, yeah, like, why The Last of Us 2 is hated? Because it's just not that well written of a game. The story is worse compared to the first one. And again, I actually want to replay The Last of Us 2 because the gameplay, the stealth and combat, when you're not doing those overly long, boring walking segments, the stealth and combat is actually good, even though it's not as good as the Metal Gear Solid games. But hey, it's still good stuff. The problem, though, is that there's a lot of walking, talking segments, and even worse is that the dialogue's not good like the first game. And, it's just a gross, mediocre game. It's Hollywood. It's Oscar bait slop, and a lot of Last of Us 2 fans are just in denial about the game. Like The Last of Us Part 2 is good, actually. Yeah, sure, it's good. Just say you never played any other video games before in your life, normie. Yeah, I keep saying the word, I'm sorry. But yeah, man, The Last of Us 2 was just completely terrible. One of the worst fandoms ever, because if you don't like The Last of Us 2, you're going to get called sexist, misogynist, Nazi, racist, or whatever. And that's the thing about The Last of Us 2 fans is that they are full of left-leaning people who have never played a better game in their entire lives. So when they connect to the game and you don't like the game, they end up, using a bunch of buzzwords, like, oh, you're a Nazi for not liking The Last of Us 2. Oh, you hate women. Yeah, I really do hate women, even though some of my favorite games feature female characters, like the first Last of Us. And even then, the creative gameplay in The Last of Us 2 is still not as good as the creative gameplay that you would see in something like Metal Gear Solid 5. Like, as a stealth action game, The Last of Us 2 is good, but nothing really that phenomenal. Like everything that you've seen in The Last of Us 2 has already been done better in other stealth action video games like the MGS franchise. The last group of fans I want to talk about that are usually overly defensive are Dragon Ball GT fans. Because when GT came out, a lot of people really fucking hate it. And to this day, a lot of people really fucking hate it. And I don't blame them because when you watch Dragon Ball GT, you see how much worse it is compared to Z. The fights are worse. The music's more forgettable. The filler is worse. Like, my goodness, how GT understood Dragon Ball, I don't think GT understood Dragon Ball at all because GT just feels so much more soulless and more forgettable compared to Dragon Ball. With Dragon Ball, it's funny, has better, more memorable villains. I don't remember a single thing about, GT's villains. GT's villains, you know, I don't remember them. They're dragon people, and then most of them are just joke villains, and then two of them are serious, or three of them are serious. Nobody cares. Like, when I think of good Dragon Ball villains, what comes to my mind would be something like Frieza or Perfect Cell. And what's this? You're going to have to slander the more popular and more successful Super in order to make GT look better in a better light. Well, you know what? At least with Super, it redeemed Gohan after he became a joke character in the Buu saga. At least Super has Akira Toriyama's sense of humor. At least Super, has better fights and animations compared to GT. Like, don't get me wrong, Super started off with rough animation, but GT, oh my god, like the Super Saiyan 4 transformation, it was so lame when I saw it in GT. Like, there was nothing, you know? Like, oh my god, like, here's a more faithful video. Dragon Ball GT sucks, and here's why. Yeah, that's more accurate. I mean, my god, even the creators of Team 4 Star, they watched through Dragon Ball GT, and what was so interesting about their GT reviews is that they were wondering, like, why do people defend this? Dragon Ball GT is soulless. It is a soulless cash grab that was poorly planned and poorly timed. And yeah, Super has flaws, but I would take Super over GT any day. There's a good reason why Super is objectively more popular and more successful. Yeah, don't get me wrong, antagonists like Jiren are boring, but Jiren still has better fights and animation compared to whatever GT had to offer. But yeah, Last of Us 2 fans are just retarded. Like, imagine saying that people hate women because they don't like a fictional AAA video game. Like, why do you even bother existing at this point?